Today, when you're at home, you got to think about what type of food item you'll propose. This will be a combination of two things. The type of food items you're interested in, so that you have a personal interest in the uh, product, and that will motivate you to do your best on the presentation. And also, you'll refine it based on responses to market research that you'll conduct, because this is business class. We need to create a food item that people want. So, after working on this survey and watching this screencast, you'll be able to make a Google Form survey and with some good questions, and distribute it and get at least 30 responses, hopefully from friends from outside this class, ideally even outside of North Toronto. And Google Forms has been a popular way to do this. It's very, very easy. I've uploaded the help instructions. It's pretty much you go to your Google Drive and you get started and you just start typing. I really feel like a screencast would complicate things, but I can give you one-on-one help. And other students have found that Instagram allows you to do some yes or no questions. Now, the depth of the responses is not as good, but the reach is much higher, and the number of people who answer is higher than a Google form, just because of the way people are using it. They don't mind doing some yes or no or some one-word answers. So you do one or the other, or a combination of both. Everyone needs to make sure that the survey is distributed so that you get enough results, because our target is 30 responses. So just some examples of types of questions you could ask. Sometimes you want to prompt the respondent and give them a hint. Other times you just want the top of the mind recall. For example, for advertising research, you might want to ask first, have you seen any soft drink ads lately? And that'll force them to think, because if they just walked by the bus shelter Sprite ad every day and they never processed it, then it's not a very effective advertisement. It's not attracting attention. And but if you said, hey, have you seen a Sprite ad lately? It might bias their response just slightly. So sometimes they start things off with the unaided recall, just where you fill in the blanks, very, very general questions, and then they proceed to the aided recall, where you give them a hint, and then it's now, have you seen the latest Sprite advertisement? And we ask both questions to kind of get an honest view, because if you said, hey, have you seen the latest Sprite ad? A lot of people would be like, oh yeah, of course I did, even if they didn't really recall seeing it. So that's why you might mix in some unaided recall and some aided recall. And you also might mix in some quantitative data, like numerical responses, like demographics, like this is great for checklists, ranges, like how would you rate the flavor of Sprite from 1 to 5? How would you rate the packaging for Sprite from 1 to 5? It could be how old are you? Well, I am 18 to 24, I'm 25 to 34, I'm 35 to, and you have these ranges. You could do by gender, you could do by how much do you spend on soft drinks. You could really, and then you could put it into a nice bar chart or a pie chart that would be a visual aid to supplement your presentation. So how many soft drinks do you consume weekly? And then we could say, okay, well, 50% of the class consumes at least 17 soft drinks weekly, or whatever you find. Then the other option is qualitative data, and this is a little more general, and this is non-numerical, and it's harder to organize, but it can give you an overall impression about a brand or a product. and people you might give them a paragraph to answer. You might give them a fill in the blank to answer, and it's about their overall impression. So, what do you like about Sprite? And some people will say, well, I like the taste of lemon and lime. Some people will say, well, I like it's refreshing. Um, Others say, well, it's always been my favorite drink because other people in my family liked it, so it's been customary to have it, and you get these overall impressions. Or if you said, well, what do you think of North Toronto Collegiate? And then people could just say, well, they're honest impressions, and it's harder to organize, but it can give the characteristics. You be like, okay, well, people had positive impressions of North Toronto. 25% of students had positive impressions about the atmosphere at North Toronto, 25% were negative, and 50% were neutral. But it's a little bit more of an overall impression. So definitely get the ball rolling with some market research, like demographics, gender, age, income level, perhaps, family status. Now we're focusing on teenagers, so income level and family status is not as important, but you could just get the ball rolling with their gender and their name. No, sorry, not their name, their age. And also, the good thing about starting with some easy questions is it gets people to trust you, and it gets the ball rolling. And then they start to fill out the survey, and then if you ask them a trickier question later on, they'll follow through. If you started off with something really difficult, like how much money do you save each month? People will be like, well, that's kind of personal. I don't want to tell you. But if you got things started and they answered a few questions about, their age, how much they spent on food each week, how often they went shopping, maybe at the end of the survey you can slide in that tricky question about how much do they save, and they'll respond. Geographics would be where do you live? Usually, do they live in a urban city area? Do they live in a suburban area, such as Vaughan, Markham, some of those areas around Toronto that are not totally urbanized, but do still have city features to them, or do they live in a rural area? We know we're probably going to pick teenagers from this area for this survey, so geographics is not as important. Psychographics is what do people believe? You could ask them about their political views. Again, is that really relevant to a survey about food? It might not be. What's their opinion on so-and-so? What's their opinion on COVID-19 shutdown? What do they like about the city of Toronto? These are sort of beliefs that people might have. Then you could also ask lifestyle questions. How often do you go out to lunch? Why do you go out for food? How often do you go to the gym? How often do you read? Do you enjoy going to school? These are some sort of lifestyle questions, about people's personal habits. Do you watch television? Do you play video games? These kinds of lifestyle questions. And then you could say, well, among males aged, 18 to 24, video game users spend, $50 a week on snacks, and their favorite snack is Doritos. And product usage, are they a non-user? They never go to this business. A light user, they go maybe once a month. A medium user, once a week, or a heavy user, going quite often 2 to 3 times a week. And then you get an idea, because if you're designing a special sandwich for Subway and someone's a non-user and they want you to make a new fancy sandwich, that's not as important as when a loyal customer proposes the same thing. Sometimes we might do what we call awareness, attitude, and usage. And we ask them in this order. because if we asked about usage first, it prejudges the awareness question, and we want to sort of firstly get, do people know about the business? Do people have a favorable attitude about the business? Do people shop there? So, for example, we could say list all the fast food restaurants in the Yonge and Eglinton area that you can think of, and maybe you give them a paragraph, or you give, list all the fast food restaurants you've, shopped at. Would be a follow-up question, and you can then, on page 2, give them a check box. Then you could say, so awareness. We get them to list all the fast food restaurants, and Popeyes may or may not appear in every response. Some people just might not be aware of it, or they just might not think about it enough. Then we could say, well, what is your impression about Popeyes Louisiana chicken? And people would say, oh, it's very delicious, or it's too expensive. I do not enjoy going there. It's too busy. The restaurant, the staff is friendly. Whatever it is, we could get their attitude, whether it's positive or negative about it. And then lastly, how often do you visit Popeyes? So firstly, we say, like, hey, are you aware that there's a new business? Secondly, what's your opinion, positive or negative? And lastly, how often do you visit this business? So I think a pricing research question would be good here, because you want to set a good price. We had a pricing unit, so it's definitely, you could apply that pricing unit. And you could say, for example, how much do you spend on clothes monthly? How much do you spend on a hoodie? Some sort of question like that to get an idea of what people's budgets are, and then it helps you set the right price. And now, one thing about this, don't give these wide ranges. I've seen over the years, how much do you spend on lunch? Well, I spend $5 to $10. And that's a big range. Narrow it down a little bit, because $5 to $10 kind of goes from discount to a little bit more middle of the road, and maybe even expensive items. So be a little bit more precise with your pricing, or leave it blank. Just have them enter the dollar amount. Motivation research. Determine why a customer buys a product. So for example, if we know that people are buying a car because it's safe, then we'll emphasize the safety in the commercial. And you could ask people, what's the biggest factor when you buy new clothes? Well, it's trendy, it's priced appropriately, my friends buy it, it's convenient, it's pink, it's blue, whatever it is. It's endorsed by Drake or Michael Jordan or The Weeknd, whatever it is, and then you can adjust your marketing as a result. Product research would be what could be improved about the product. So you could say, firstly, how would you rate Tim Hortons breakfast sandwiches from 1 to 5 on taste, from 1 to 5 on price? And then you could say, if you could add one item to Tim Hortons menu, what would it be? And say you didn't have you're like, hey, I know I want to work with Freshie, or I want to work at Tim Hortons for this project, but you don't know what type of sandwich. Maybe you sort of ask them about what do they like about the original sandwiches that are already for sale, or the original wraps, and then see what's missing, and then your proposal for this presentation is what people think is missing. And then you could also ask people about their advertising habits, like, are they on social media? Have they bought food because it was advertised? What type of advertisements have they seen lately? Because you need to create a mock-up advertisement for your sandwich. So you might want to ask people where they're going to be advertised so you can go and get it. Now, to get an idea about what's out there, there's a couple of surveys posted in the classroom, and you can fill them out and you can see what people asked before, and there are a mix of different questions here, and then it's different kinds of food. Try to get 10 to 12 good questions, and then it'll help you analyze the results, and then you'll be able to create a sandwich that's targeted towards your age group. And then once you review these sample questions and you think of your list of questions, use Google Forms or Instagram to get it out there. Email me if there's any issues, and get those 30 responses.